The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host, Don McIntosh, and we're going to talk about hypertension today, high blood pressure. Talking with us about this important subject is Dr. Hans Diehl. Welcome, Dr. Diehl.
Good to be here, Don.
We're glad you made the trip all the way from Loma Linda. And, you are an author, you are a researcher, and you really have helped a lot of people. I want to thank you for that. The originator of the Coronary Health Improvement Project, or the CHIP program. You have a webpage, chiphealth.com. And hypertension is one of those things in the CHIP program that you help people with. Talk with us about hypertension. How large a problem is it?
You know, Don, it's a large problem. We estimate that every third American adult is suffering from hypertension or high blood pressure problems. Every third American adult. And that's 60 million people, as you see on the next graphic here. 60 million people are suffering from blood pressures that are above 130 for the upper number and above 85 for the lower number. And that means that 20 million of these people are taking medications right now. And yet, there's very good research that makes it very clear that probably 60 to 80% of these patients on medication could be off these medications because they could probably reduce their blood pressure to normal if they made just some simple lifestyle changes, and they would have results within 1 to 2 months, 4 to 8 weeks.
So these are the people 130 over 90, you said? 130 over 80?
Thereabouts. 180.
And isn't there like kind of a borderline area that's also dangerous? 120 to 130 is getting dangerous.
Yeah.
So there's probably even more if you include that. And these could be drastically changed. These numbers could be very much reduced just by simple things, which I know in the CHIP program you probably share those. But help us today. What can we do about high blood pressure? First of all, what are the problems with it? I mean, to have good water pressure, I say, hey, that's great. I got good pressure. I got good pressure in my tires on my car, as I'm going down the road. These are good things. What's the big deal about having a little high blood pressure?
Well, when it comes to the human body, too much pressure is not very wise because it drives some of the plaques. It drives some of the atherosclerotic processes. It drives some of the likelihood of heart disease and stroke dramatically. As a matter of fact, high blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for strokes in Americans. So you want to really keep that blood pressure below the 130, below the 85, because if you go up to 140 over 90, let's say, right there you have a 30% higher chance of a heart attack and a stroke than if you kept it at the more ideal numbers.
Now, is this high blood pressure afflicting youth and young people as well as adults?
Well, it usually builds up. Yes, it can afflict young people, but it's usually found more in people that are in their 40s, 50s, and up. As a matter of fact, by the time you are 50 years of age in our society, you have about a 50% likelihood that you have high blood pressure. When you're 70 years of age, you have an 80% chance of having high blood pressure. And yet, in many societies around the world, as people get older, blood pressures actually come down. They don't go up. This is an American phenomenon. This is a Western disease that has to do with, it's not a genetic thing as much as it seems to be an environment. It has to do with our lifestyle.
Okay. Now, the reason I ask about the youth is because, we have a skyrocketing problem with obesity among youth in America. Someone told me that for every pound that's added to the human body, that's 200 extra miles of blood vessels, and I'm sure that increases the pressure.
Does.
So what I wanted to say and ask that question is because we probably need to worry about this when we are young, even though it might not show up till we're a little older.
That's very true. You lay the foundation of your habits when you're young.
So what can we do? We want to avoid the hypertension because we want to avoid the strokes. We want to avoid all the problems that happen from that pressure going up.
You know, there are probably two major kinds of hypertension. One is called essential hypertension. One is called secondary 2.
Okay.
Now, when you have secondary 2, that's a fairly rare kind of a form of hypertension. Probably 5 or 10% of all of our hypertension cases. That may be due to some kind of a cancer or some kind of a kidney problem, but 90% is related to lifestyle factors. They're called essential hypertension. You have essential high blood pressure. We don't know the exact cause, but there are 6, 7 factors that contribute to this disease to develop. And one of the most prominent ones is the amount of salt, the sodium intake, the salt in our diet.
Okay. I mean, most of us know that. We've heard that before, that salt goes up. So what are we talking about? Do I have to get rid of the salt shaker?
Well, let's go back and historically look at this. Here you see a very interesting graphic that looks at pre-shakers and post-shakers. Now, you tell me what a pre-shaker is.
That shakes before the meal, before they even taste it.
Yeah, that's right. You know people like this?
Uh-huh. I'm actually a pre-shaker sometimes. My wife gets on my case with a big, huge, well, no, she's not like that, but she gently says, don't do it again.
Yeah, you know, people go and reach out for the salt shaker without even having tasted the food. These are pre-shakers. When they looked at people that are pre-shakers versus post-shakers, you know, they tasted and then they add a little bit more, they found that those who were the pre-shakers, they had 6 times more high blood pressure, and those who were pre-shakers when compared to no shakers, no added salt, had 10 times more. So this gave us a clue that maybe salt or sodium could be involved with high blood pressure problems.
Okay, well, that's a rebuke to me. I appreciate that here in public on the show. I will give up the habit of pre-shaking.
I think your wife would be very grateful to me.
She doesn't watch 3ABN at this point because we're involved in the move, so she maybe she won't see this.
I will send her a special copy.
Okay, so now the cat's out of the bag. So pre-shaking should be given up for post-shaking, but better yet, no shaking. Yeah. Okay.
You know, there was a time when we thought that high blood pressure was strictly a cultural disease. You know, it's a pressure, high tension, right? So researchers went to these very peaceful Pacific islands, and they wanted to check out the blood pressure, and they came into the hinterland, and they measured the blood pressures. They were very, very low. They said, you see, if you live a very calm life, a relaxed life, no urban stress and pressures, your blood pressure comes down, right? Then they checked the people living close to the beach area.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
And lo and behold, they found that these people on these very calm, lovely, peaceful islands had very high blood pressure levels. They had hypertension, not dissimilar to what we have here in North America.
Why was this?
Well, what do you think?
I have no idea. Maybe they thought there was a flood coming.
Too many ships coming in? No, no. What happened is that they were actually cooking at the beach using salt water.
Oh.
Those in the hinterland, artesian well, regular water.
Okay.
So this became really a turning point in better understanding that high blood pressure may be directly related to the amount of sodium in the diet.
Okay, so I get the message. No shaking and no frying my food in the salt water.
Right.
Or cooking it in the salt water.
That's right.
All right.
So along came a young PhD student at the University of Michigan, and she had sort of the right idea. She said, you know, I should really find a research project where I can travel the world on a grant and get my PhD at the same time.
Sounds somewhat opportunistic, but that's good.
Yeah, it's Dr. Gleiberman.
Okay.
Outstanding work done. She looked at 27 populations around the world, traveled, and then measured blood pressure levels and the amount of salt in the diet. Here you see the results. Take a look.
Okay.
Here you see when she found a society that was taking in about 16 grams of salt.
Which is about how much?
That's about 3 teaspoons of salt a day. And then you go up. These are now 50-year-old males, 50-year-old men. And the diastolic, the lower blood pressure number there is 94. The systolic upper number is 158. You know that is clearly
high blood pressure.
High blood pressure, okay? You need to see a physician. You need to do something about this. 158 over 95, that's very dangerous, okay? 50 years of age, man, how much salt?
16 grams.
16 grams, 3 teaspoons. Then she began to map out all these numbers, and she developed some regression lines. There were straight lines that emerged, and here you see it on the next one. The lower the salt intake, the lower the diastolic and the systolic blood pressure, the higher the salt, you see the results. On the left-hand side, you see a developing country, very little salt intake. On the right-hand side, you see the 16 grams, that's the American Western Industrialized Society. And so she began to say to herself, you know, to measure the amount of salt in the diet is not easy to do. It takes a lot of work. She said, I wonder what would happen if I would just measure the blood pressure of these populations and I just then make a prediction of how much salt they're eating. So she would go on her chart, begin to pick the amount of blood pressure in the population. She could measure it very easily. And then she predicted, aha, they must be on 4, 6, 8, 10 grams of salt. And then she did the confirmation with the more extensive tests.
Bingo. She was hitting it right on the nail.
Yeah.
That's why she got her PhD.
Well, there's a direct relationship between the amount of sodium in the diet and the amount of hypertension in society. The relationship is a very clear-cut one.
So probably one of the simplest things we can do if we have hypertension or high blood pressure, well, first of all, I have to find out if we do have it, which is go get it checked. There's lots of places to get it checked. Probably, very practically speaking, get it checked a few times so you don't have the white coat syndrome of going into the doctor. Get it checked, make sure you know where you are. And then the second thing is look at whether or not you're a pre-shaker, which we've discovered I am, or I was.
You were. Good.
And move to being a post-shaker, or better yet, a no-shaker. And then maybe move away from the beach, from cooking your food in the salt. We're talking with Dr. Hans Diehl. We're talking about hypertension. A lot of the things we're talking about today you can find on his website, chiphealth.com. When we come back, what are we going to talk about? We're going to look at some ways to really get a handle on this.
We want to see, where do we find the salt? If we cut back, what do we cut back? And is it just the salt, or are there some other factors that are also playing a very major role?
You'll want to join us when we come back.
Are you confused about the endless stream of new and often contradictory health information? With companies trying to sell new drugs and special interest groups paying for studies that spin the facts, where can you find a common-sense approach to health? One way is to ask for your free copy of Dr. Arnott's 24 Realistic Ways to Improve Your Health. Dr. Timothy Arnott and the Lifestyle Center of America produced this helpful booklet of 24 short, practical health tips based on scientific research and the Bible that will help you live longer, happier, and healthier. For example, did you know that women who drink more water lower the risk of a heart attack? Or that 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night can minimize your risk of ever developing diabetes? Find out how to lower your blood pressure and much more. If you're looking for help, not hype, then this booklet's for you. Just log on to 3abn.org and click on free offers or call us during regular business hours. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back. We're talking about high blood pressure, hypertension. We've been talking with Dr. Hans Diehl. We've been talking about some of the things that kind of set people apart with hypertension. If you salt your food before you eat it versus after you eat it, if you're doing it before, you're going to be probably struggling with hypertension. And now that I confessed my problem and gave it up, you can too. But we're going to look at some more things that we can do as we look at this important subject. You know, there's a lot of people out there watching that probably have hypertension. That's no joking matter for them.
No.
They really have real problems because of this. And you're going to share some practical things with us now coming up.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we need to do, Don, is we need to begin to understand how much salt we actually consume. If we have such a powerful epidemic of hypertension in our society, we said every third American adult, how much salt do we actually take in? How much should we have? What is the body's need for salt? Does the body need salt?
I think so. I mean, if you don't have sodium, you can pretty act. Well, when I was a nurse, whenever their sodium went down, they started to act a little loony.
Yeah, that's right. We need about 1/5 of a teaspoon of salt a day for the body.
Okay.
1/5 of a teaspoon.
All right.
But most of us take in about 2 to 2.5 teaspoonfuls of salt a day. So we're probably taking 10 to 15 times more salt than the body really requires. So we're probably taking too much.
So 1/5 of a teaspoon.
Yeah, I mean,
It's hardly
it's
not
a gram.
anything. They get that in a bag of popcorn.
Oh, more than that. Yeah. So what we want to do is recommend to our viewing audience, instead of taking the usual Western salt intake of about 2 teaspoons or more, maybe we ought to get down to at least less than 1 teaspoon a day.
Okay.
So we need to really cut our salt consumption at least in half, maybe even less than that. Especially if you have high blood pressure, you have to be very, very, very low on salt, which means that your food will taste rather bland for a while. But they have good news for you.
What's the good news? Salsa?
30 days.
Put salsa on it.
No, that's all right. But if you endure it for 30 days, your taste buds will adjust.
Only 30 days?
It just takes 30 days or less. Of course, you can use some herbs to substitute, you know, the salsa that you talked about. So there are ways to do that. But we need to really face the idea that, yes, maybe the food will taste flat if you're used to the American Western salt intake. But in about 2, 3, 4 weeks,
All right.
taste buds will adjust.
So have they done studies on that?
Oh, yeah.
And they know that it takes about
yeah.
that long?
You know, I worked in a lifestyle center like this, where people would come for 4 weeks. After 2 weeks, the patient would come to me and say, "Well, we're so glad you fired the chef and you got us a new chef." Because they thought the food is tasting better now, 2 weeks into the program.
But it
wasn't
was the same chef.
Same chef.
I'm glad you didn't fire the chef.
No, we couldn't. It takes too much time to train them.
Right. Okay, great. So, all right. So we need to just, number one, not be shaking before, and then looking at exactly how much salt we have in our diet and trying to get it down. And we're going to have a little pain on that journey.
Well, I think you saw it on the graphic there, yeah, that pointed out what the optimal amount of salt is. It should be less than 5 grams to be sure.
Okay.
We also talked about the body only needs 1 gram of salt a day, and that most of us take about 10 to 15 grams of salt a day.
Okay, yeah, let's look at that graphic and just look at that again. The optimal level of salt is what? What do we see here?
It's about less than 1 gram of salt a day.
So as we look at this graphic, then that's what this is describing.
Yeah, you know, we only need, the requirements are like 1 gram of salt a day.
Okay.
We're consuming 15 grams, that's 2 to 3 teaspoons of salt a day. And probably we should have no more than 5 grams. That's the optimal salt intake. And if people have high blood pressure, maybe they should be even taking less than 5 grams of salt.
So where is the salt? Where do we get it? Where is it coming from? I mean, 15 grams versus 5. I mean, something has gone wrong.
Right.
It's like people are pouring salt into my mouth while I'm asleep. How do we get this salt? Where is it coming from?
Well, you know, some people think it's the salt shaker. So I think that's a good start. Ban the salt shaker.
Ban the salt shaker.
Especially pre-shakers.
Yes, you are really making me hurt on this. Okay, take away the salt shaker, but you're saying some people think that, which means you're going to tell me something else here.
Well, yes. People think, well, if I just take care of the salt shaker, I'm going to be all right. Not really. Because the salt shaker only adds about 20% of the salt that we take in. 80% comes in processed foods.
Like tomato soup.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, for instance, when you go from potatoes to potato chips, you increase the salt content by 100%. 200 times.
Whoa, but I so much like potato chips. What do I do, Dr. Deal?
Well, you have to get potato chips that are baked,
Baked
and
chips.
they're low in sodium, no salt
Okay.
added.
Okay.
Or,
What
you
about
know-
those sun chips, you know?
Yeah, that would be all right. Low sodium, right?
Yeah, we got
Read
a
the
Subway
labels.
sandwich the other day. You saw what I got. Was that okay?
Yeah, I think
you only
so.
ate one of those, and I ate the rest. Were you watching your salt?
No, I was all right.
Okay.
That was okay. But you know, when you look at, for instance, kidney beans,
Kidney beans.
yeah,
All right.
you buy kidney beans in a can usually.
Mm-hmm.
The salt concentration is 200 times that of the original kidney bean. So whenever you have processed foods, it seems that manufacturers add some salt to it in order to make it taste the way they want it to taste. And that's usually too high in salt.
So
So
go away
processing.
from the processed foods. Foods is grown. Do your own kidney beans, your own pinto beans when you just soak them yourself.
Yeah, or sometimes if you cannot find canned beans that have been identified as low sodium or no sodium added, you know, some people with high blood pressure actually rinse their beans to get rid of the salt.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you take them out, you rinse the salt off, and just like moving in, you know, you said the first half, the people that live near the salt water, you just move inland and,
Yeah.
and rinse them off.
But I think it's also important to recognize where the salt is. You know, when you have a slice of cheese,
Slice of cheese.
2 slices of cheese, pasteurized,
Mm-hmm.
2 grams of salt, just 2 slices of grams. And you shouldn't have more than perhaps 5 grams for the whole day. I mean, you can see what happens when you have a pizza, right? Maybe a favorite dish. But, you know, if you have high blood pressure, you have to really think about that.
Okay, so making these choices, do you have any magic you can share with us?
Well, I think by and large, the simpler you eat, the better you're off. The more you can get to foods as grown, the better you're off. Have those potatoes. Potato chips, Pringles. These are processed foods. You have to be careful because the salt is usually accumulating very, very quickly.
You have a list here of better choices,
Yeah.
the magic of better choices. Let's go through those.
Well, you know, you might also want to take a look at fast foods.
Okay.
High in salt, usually. So you have to begin to read labels. If you are tied to a fast food diet, you have to be really, really careful. But it's not just the salt. I mean, of course, we should kind of shake the shaker. We should shake the salt habit. But there are some other factors. Here you see the next one. Number 1, drastically reduce the salt. Number 2, eat more potassium-rich foods.
Like bananas, blueberries.
Yeah, unrefined foods, vegetables.
And then
they're high
the
in
next one it
potassium.
says here.
Yeah, then also do something about weight. You know, for every extra pound that we carry, we're increasing the likelihood of high blood pressure. Number 4, we have to do something about atherosclerosis, you know, the hardening of the arteries. And as we begin to adopt a simpler diet, the arteries begin to become a little bit more elastic and they become wider. Then number 5, we have to do something about smoking, and obviously we have to do something about alcohol. Alcohol is often misunderstood. People think that, well, I just use a little bit of alcohol. You know, if you are just a social drinker, I'm sorry to say, but if you are just a social drinker, you have to keep in mind that probably 30% of the high blood pressure problem in our society is due to social drinking, using alcohol, what we think of in a responsible manner. But when it comes to high blood pressure, it is not the best thing to do.
How does that work? What does the alcohol do? How does it make the blood pressure go up?
I really don't know.
Okay, there's some kind of factor that just does
Well,
that.
I mean, alcohol can have obviously an effect on constricting blood vessels, certain blood vessels. And that's probably how it exerts its effect. It's not your best interest. And besides, alcohol also adds some extra calories, right? And we talked about overweight.
Now, when you exercise, does that help your blood pressure problems, or does it make it go up? I mean,
Excellent idea.
excellent.
Excellent idea. That probably should be number 7.
All right, well, you know, losing excess weight, I thought maybe, you know, you have options. You can lose weight by amputation, which we probably don't recommend, or you can exercise.
I think exercise would lower the blood pressure fairly consistently. It's a great idea.
And then reducing atherosclerosis, I mean, that's the whole idea of the CHIP program. You help people understand what that is, how to reduce it through education, and then implementation, food is grown, all these different things.
Yeah. You know, the Surgeon General that we used to have made a very profound statement, and you see it right here. He said, probably no prescription is more valuable than knowledge. That's what the CHIP program is trying to do. 40 hours of education, 40 hours of learning together in a group of 50 people, 500 people, night after night, developing new habits, looking at the scientific evidence, and looking at high blood pressure and how it relates to lifestyle factors.
So what happens in that program? You put people through that. Do the people that are hypertensive in your CHIP program, do they see good results?
Excellent results. We measure everything before they come into the program. We measure everything after they leave the program 4 weeks later. And then, of course, they go into an alumni structured regular meeting program for the rest of the year. We find that the blood pressure levels come down 10 to 15% within 4 weeks.
Okay, so that's good news. And once that comes down, all kinds of problems go away. And the things that hypertension can lead to, strokes, impotence, all these different things. Sometimes these medications people take to get their blood pressure down have side effects that people don't like as well.
Yeah, and you know, we could sidestep these side effects very effectively by making some simple lifestyle changes. Why would you want to take a medication to desalt the body, to take the salt out, to take the water out, when you just have to
take it out,
reduce the salt intake? Okay?
Yeah.
So we have a great opportunity to help ourselves in the context of good medical care. Work with your physician and begin to take some responsibility, and you can have an excellent chance, 80% of the people, to be able to reduce the blood pressure problems and not have to rely on medication and worry about the side effects and the money too.
How does God factor into this?
Well, God made us in a very special way. He is the master designer, and He wanted us to be a good steward. That which is entrusted to us, we should give back to Him. And He will give us the power to do that which is not easy to do. To change lifestyle change, to make lifestyle changes, it's not easy. But you can swim across and against the current of culture and be in better health and honor the Creator, because He's going to be empowering you to do this.
So you'll pray for me that I become a post shaker, right?
Yes.
Or a no shaker at all. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Health for a Lifetime. If you want more information about Dr. Deal's programs, you can go to chiphealth.com, and you'll find all kinds of resources there. We're glad you watch our program here on 3ABN, and we hope that as a result of today's program, you can put some things into practice. You can bring that blood pressure down, and as a result, you'll have health that lasts for a lifetime.